Yeah. Hello everyone, good soul. I'm Nithyasri from India. I'm very happy in participating in this space habitat event. My topic is mining on the moon. It comes under energy production. So let's start with the introduction. Fusion is the future. So we all know that we have more amount of non-renewable sources on Earth which we are currently using, and say for example it is very harmful for the environment and so, but in case if we choose for using the renewable sources, it is a very safe and clean process. So here I consider this helium-3 as the renewable source for energy production. Energy from active stars, so they are the most fundamental source of energy in the universe. Counter to fusion, it is so clean and safe, extremely effective, flexible, and sustainable. The moon has an abundance of resources, so it has been shown to contain various resources like platinum, silicon, iron, titanium, ammonia, mercury, and even water. So helium-3, it is very scarce on Earth, but it is abundant on the moon. Helium-3 ions were discovered in the upper crust of the moon after the Apollo 17 lunar mission returned soil samples to the moon. So there are many proofs that helium-3 is very abundant on the moon. And if we use helium-3 in fusion reactors, it will just produce enormous amount of energy, which is really safe. And it is forever because it is not a renewable one. It is not non-renewable. It is a kind of renewable energy which will be available on the surface of the moon forever. So I consider it as a big picture. So the harvesting the moon for helium-3 will. Helium-3 is naturally produced through fusion in sun. It settles on the moon's surface. Earth's atmosphere repels helium-3 from settling on its surface. So it is a basic comparison between the moon and the earth. The moon surface, it just allows the helium surface to settle down, but whereas in case of earth, it just repels the helium-3. This helium-3, it just provides ample clean and safe energy, and also this helium-3 has advanced research in new technologies. That's why I consider this helium-3 in a very big picture. And also, uh, it can easily naturally produced from the sun. So considering the moon, 1 million tons of helium-3 on the lunar surface, helium-3 combined with deuterium, it produces energy. This amount will produce energy which is 10 times the amount of all of the Earth's fossil fuels and 2 times the amount of all Earth's uranium. So when we compare the production of energy, even if we consider all the fossil fuels which are in Earth, it is a way more greater than that. So it is 10 times more than that. So there is no magnetic fields on the moon. So its surface gets bombarded with all these charged particles. This makes the layer of rock and dust on the moon's surface a good candidate for obtaining several materials that are far less abundant on Earth. So considering the moon's magnetic field, so there is no magnetic field. So easily all the elements or all the charged particles just bombarded on the moon surface. So the layers of rocks or the surface of the moon, it has more amount of resources while compared to that of the Earth. So how do we get this helium-3? So, artist retention of H3 mining mission using direct sun energy. H helium-3 particles will then be heated to about 1400 degrees. 1400 degrees is the required temperature to convert this helium-3 to usable energy. So, as we all know, this helium-3 is an isotope. So, we can just treat this helium-3 in and about 1400 degrees for using purpose. So there is also another option like we can transport this energy to Earth via microwave shot or even with the spacecraft. So by these two methods, we can just transport these helium-3 to Earth. Because in Earth, we do have less amount of helium and we are just depleting the resources. So there are less amount of energy for future generation. So we can use this idea and we can transport these types of energies either by microwave shot or by spacecraft. So using helium-3 as an energy, it's thing to think about the resources we need for space exploration, but we also need to think about the solutions for powering our lives right here on Earth. So we have more amount of future missions to colonize Moon, to colonize Mars, and so on. But one thing we need to consider here is that just to power our lives on Earth, we also need some energy. So already we are using more non-renewable sources and more harmful energies, and we are destroying the environment of Earth. But in case right now we need to find new economical way of generating energy that don't rely on finite resources and are less damaging to the environment. When we consider these two cases, obviously we will choose this renewable source because it will be less damaging to the environment and it is not finite. Absolutely, the helium-3 or whatever the renewable source, it is infinite in nature. So we can use whenever we want. So for instance, helium could be theoretically be used to generate massive amounts of energy, like through nuclear fusion reactors. So in these ways, we can use these helium-3. So what's exactly happening is that uh, we are using this helium for fusion power. So we need an isotope of helium called helium-3, which has one less neutron in its nucleus compared to the normal helium. So normal helium has one extra neutron in the nucleus. So fusing two of these atoms together, or fusing an helium-3 atom with an atom of deuterium, an isotope of hydrogen, so under very high temperature and pressure. So as I told you before, the temperature should be in and about 1400 degrees. We can yield an enormous amount of energy. So you may have a question that it has enormous amount of energy, but it is very clear that it doesn't have any harmful gases. It is completely clean and safe. In fact, the nuclear fusion is what powers the sun and the other stars. So we are not using this fusion process in this case alone. Even in the sun, even in the other stars, this nuclear fusion is the power. So it's energy generation on a much bigger scale compared to any current technologies here on Earth. Even in Earth, we have more amount of technologies and many more modern technologies, but even that could not produce this much amount of enormous energy, where in case this reactor will produce a very enormous amount of energy. So He3, helium-3, it's a way ahead. So if the helium-3 predictions are correct, what will be our next steps? So the research, the development, and building the helium-3 reactors. This could be our plan. So we can build moon base, establish lunar mining industries and infrastructure. We can develop supply chain to transport this helium-3 from the moon to Earth. We can just establish the international consensus for mining the moon. So obviously it's a future upcoming one. The things to consider here. So consider the planet Earth in the next year, like 2023, or you can even consider the planet Earth in 2030 or 2033, some years later. So, increase the population. There will be obviously increased in the population and increased in global industrialization. Obviously, if the population gets increased, the energy demand will also get increased. So these three will increase. As normally we are using this peak oil and natural gas. Obviously, if everything got increased, these supplies and demands, which just results in higher energy costs. So obviously, we need to have a consideration that cost to transport helium-3 from the moon to Earth. Is it cost effective? Yeah. So by considering these increase in population, increase in energy demands, we need to have a safe energy production, and that could be the solution from this H3 from moon to Earth. So that will be really a good solution for that. Yeah, we all know this moon is our neighbor and one and only natural satellite. So will what effect would moon mining have on Earth? So we are digging the moon for our purpose to for many energy productions and all. So will that affect the Earth? Mining all that helium won't cause the moon to deflate and fall out of the sky. Nor will mining operations have enough of an impact to affect the mass on the moon in any major way. Even if the moon, even if the moon just lost 1% of its total mass, this still would not significantly affect its orbit or the gravitational pull or the Earth oceans that cause high and low tides. So it will not have much effect on the Earth. Even if it lost 1% of its total mass also, this mining will not have a bad impact on Earth. Obviously, it is not going to affect the Earth and it's not going to affect the moon as these resources are high in amount. Um, Coming to my conclusions, there are two sides of mining the moon. We can transport this helium from moon to Earth to fulfill the needs of future generations because our non-renewable sources are already depleting. Second thing, why we need to mining the moon and using those resources is that if we colonize moon, these renewable energy can protect its environment and these types of energy productions are safe. And as it is renewable one, it is forever. Helium-3 neutron release isn't the problem at all. There are no other radioactive byproducts. After this reactions, there will be no radioactive byproducts. That will be a major advantage when compared to some other experimental fusion reactions. So considering this renewable energy, this helium-3 has got its own advantage and even there are, as I told you before, there are two cases. Either we can use this in the moon itself, or we can just bring back those things to the Earth. As we all know, many upcoming missions are really based on lunar stuffs. We are just concentrating on moon missions like Artemis and so on. So the idea can be using those renewable energies on Earth or on the moon. Both has its own advantage, and I always suggest that we need to save some amount of energy for the future generations of the Earth because we are now depleting all the sources. So there will be a very big question mark for the future generations. So obviously we need to think and we need to safeguard the future generations by having these types of alternative ways. And these are my few references for my abstract and stuffs. Thank you so much for your patient listening.